Hey, what's wrong, buddy? I'm just sad because there aren't enough retro handhelds to choose from. There are like literally billions of retro handhelds to choose from. Don't belittle my pain. I just want one more, okay? Okay. Well, maybe we should open up this package from Powkiddy and see what's inside. No, but maybe it's another retro handheld. Really? Yeah, maybe. Go on, open it. All right. It's... What? Why, you're a real jerk, you know that? Hi there, I'm TechDweeb, welcome. Thanks for clicking on the video today. Have you been searching high and low for the perfect handheld? Well, you've been wasting your time. Sorry, don't shoot the messenger, loser. Because the perfect handheld doesn't exist. And it can't exist. Even if there was a theoretical handheld that was perfect for some system or another, like Game Boy, the perfect Game Boy handheld. It would have the perfect screen for Game Boy, comfortable controls for Game Boy games, and be in the form factor that suits Game Boy games. Perfect, right? Well, no, because that perfect Game Boy would be a terrible PSP handheld. And likewise, the perfect PSP handheld with a big, beautiful widescreen, horizontal controls, pretty much the RP3 Plus, if we're being honest. That would be a terrible Game Boy handheld. There is no one single perfect handheld, is what I'm saying. Which is why it's good that we have so many choices. We have handhelds that are great for widescreen content, like the RP3 Plus or the Powkiddy X28. We have handhelds that are great for 4x3 content, like the RG353V or the RG405M, or my new favorite 4x3 handheld, the Retroid Pocket 2S. Oh, hello. But none of those are ideal for Game Boy or Game Boy Color or Pico 8. If only there was a new powerful handheld that was ideal for square ratio systems. Something that would be good for vertical games. Something with a horizontal control layout. Something that could run Emulation Station and had the power to do some more advanced stuff. All right, yeah, fine, it's the RGB30. You clicked on the video, so you know what we're here for. This thing. Let's review it. The Powkiddy RGB30 is the latest retro thing to hit the streets of the internet. And it's a very unique device if you haven't noticed. It's the first of its kind, really, and it checks a lot of boxes. Small pocket-friendly form factor? Check. Emulation station system compatible with custom firmwares? Check. Dual front-facing stereo speakers? Check. HDMI out? Check. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi? Check. Screen? Oh baby, that's a big square check right there. It's not your typical screen, as you can tell by the shape. It's a freaking square. I'll tell you why that's important in a bit. Powkiddy isn't known for consistency, and this device is a perfect example of the lengths that they will go to not make a new V90. So I'm angry about them for that, but let's give this thing a chance. It's a bit weird, a bit badass, but the big question is it any good? Well, I'll tell you, but I'm also going to tell you that this Powkiddy RGB30 was sent to me by the fine folks over at Go Game Geek. They sell this, and you could buy one from them if you want one. There's a link in the description below. It's less than $100 right now. If this was like $125 or something, I'd be hesitant to suggest it, but man, 95 bucks? What an awesome time to be a retro gamer. Before we get into the main event, which is the screen and the games that work well on a screen like this, let's start with the boring stuff and do a product tour. As you can see, it's a rectangle, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's got a boxy shape, which is a very nice thing to see in my opinion. It's actually a very minimalist form factor, which I love. It feels like it would be very portable. See, look, let's have this guy give us a pocket test. What do you want me to do? Just shove it in your pocket. Okay, which pocket? Just pick a pocket, dude. It's not hard. Like this? Yeah, good. See? It fits in a pocket. Now dance around. Okay. What a dork. We have some controls on the front, obviously. We'll come back to those. Inline shoulders and triggers on the top, along with some volume buttons and an HDMI hole that may or may not work. More on that in a bit. and a reset and a power button. On the bottom, we have a USB-C hole for USB fast charging, SD card hole for your system card, headphone hole, and then another SD card hole for your games card, and an OTG USB-C hole for plugging in controllers and stuff. It's a pretty minimalist aesthetic, and I really like the look of it. Actually, these little angled aesthetic touches on the side sort of make it feel like an ROG Ally knockoff or something. The controls are fine. We have inline shoulder and trigger buttons, which a lot of people don't like, but I have no problem using them, and I prefer this to keep the device low profile. All of the buttons on the device are clicky, but none of them are overly loud. The face buttons are clicky, but they're a very soft click. The D-pad is okay. In my testing, it had some very slight false diagonals, which made Contra just a little bit finicky, and for some reason I had a hard time pulling off Hadoukens, but it's pretty average as far as these devices go, so I'm not too bummed out about that. The analog sticks are good to go though, and they are in a very comfortable place on the device. They're easy to reach. Overall, it's a little bit cheap feeling, typical of Powkiddy, let's be honest, but the ergonomics are solid. I like the hand feel. The specs on this thing are nothing to write home about. I mean, would anyone really write home about retro handheld specs anyways? Dear mother, I miss you and father deeply. I am well, as are the children. Mother, did you know that the Powkiddy RGB30 uses an RK3566 processor, which is a quad-core processor clocked at 1.8 GHz? It also has 1 GB of LPDDR4 RAM, integrated Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, dual front-facing 1-watt stereo speakers, and a 4100 mAh battery. I sure am glad I wrote home about these handheld emulation device specifications. Please hug little Judy for me and tell her I miss her. And also tell her that the RGB30 has a 4-inch OCA laminated screen with a resolution of 720 by 720. We'll talk about the screen in a minute when we talk about the games, but first let's go over the system that we have on here. Out of the box, we get an unofficial version of Gelos, and because of that, it has super long boot times, which is a thing with Gelos running on devices that aren't officially supported. So I went and grabbed an official Gelos image for the RGB30, and I flashed that on a fresh SD card, and that worked great. That fixed the boot time thing. However, I need to mention that I think the HDMI port on my thing is broken. I've never been able to get video out, but other reviewers said that theirs works, and I asked in the Retro Handhelds Discord, and I seem to be the only one with this issue, so it's probably just something up with mine. And while we're talking about bummers, I need to bring up the battery. I had some weird battery behavior. It was draining properly until about 40%, and then it would drain really quick after that. So obviously something was up there. Someone in the Retro Handhelds Discord pointed out that there was a previous Powkiddy device that had similar battery behavior. And the fix there was to open the device and then unplug the battery for 10 seconds. So I did that. I opened it up, unplugged, waited 10 seconds, plugged it back in, and then fully charged the device. And then I did a battery drain test, and it seems to be working normally now. If you have this issue, just try that. It might fix it for you. But back to the good news, because there is one thing that I gotta give props to Powkiddy for. The games card that comes with the device is really good. For the most part, these are big collections for each system, without dupes, mostly English games, and the files are all named properly, and they all have art scraped for them. I should mention that the ROM sets are not complete. There are some missing games in a few systems, but I'm not bummed out because it's just about as good as these things get. So good job, Powkiddy, for giving us a games card that doesn't totally suck. And now, on to the main event. Let's talk about the screen, because this is the main thing about this thing that makes it a special thing. It's a 4-inch screen, but don't get your hopes up.
Well, maybe you should get your hopes up a little.
They're sky high!
It's 4 inches, but because it's a square ratio, that means that 4:3 content will not be any bigger than it would be if you played on a 3.5-inch screen device. However, 720 by 720 is a lot of pixels. And here you're getting way more pixel density for the 4:3 systems in the same 3.5-inch size, which is freaking crisp, man. We get pixel perfect integer scaling for Game Boy Advance, and even though it's not pixel perfect integer scaling for most 4x3 systems, it's not a big deal because the pixel density is so high. Admittedly, one bummer is PSP. Just like any of these 3.5-inch screen devices, you're gonna get a pretty small image for PSP. You can stretch the image, and that looks, well, if you like playing like this, then you're beyond redemption. Sorry, I can't help you. But for any system that doesn't fill up the screen, one thing you'll definitely want that is on the SD card that comes with the device is the bezels that you'll need for this screen. It's not a standard ratio, and it's hard to find bezels for it, but we get a full set of bezels for each system on the card, which goes a long way to making the games look less weird, rather than having black bars on the top and bottom of the screen. You'll have to set them yourself though, through RetroArch, but you'll only have to do it once for each system. And you can even make your own. I made a few for the popular ratios, just some grayish modern minimalist bezels. I'll link them below if you want to use mine. Generally, with some bezels on the screen, I don't even mind the empty space. I know it sounds crazy, but even Game Boy Advance looks really good on this screen. When you have some nice bezels to fill out the space, and plus we get that pixel perfect GBA scaling. However, there are a few systems that are amazing on this device. You've probably guessed what they are because of the screen ratio. The first is Game Boy and Game Boy Color. These two systems were both 10:9 systems, and they fill out that screen so perfectly. And at this resolution, the LCD shader looks great too. If you're into Game Boy Color games, and I definitely am into those games, then you're gonna have a great time here. If nothing else, this device is an awesome way to explore the libraries of those systems in the best way. Oh, and Neo Geo Pocket Color. There weren't many English games on that system, but there's a few solid games, and that was a 1:1 ratio system, so yeah, it's great on here too, obviously. And then I wanted to touch on some vertical stuff. We have two types of vertical games that are amazing on here. Obviously, vertical arcade is going to be great. Usually to get a vertical screen this size, we need to turn our devices on the side, which is weird, obviously. But here we get a nice big 3:4 ratio vertical screen for vertical arcade games, and you don't need to rotate the device or anything. You guys know I love me some shmups, and this has become my new favorite shmup system just because of this big beautiful screen that holds the vertical content so well. And we get a ton of vertical arcade bezels to choose from, so you're not dealing with ugly black bars on the sides of the screen. And the second vertical system that is great on here is Nintendo DS. It's not actually a vertical system, it's a dual screen system, obviously, but the screens were stacked. And here the screen is vertically big enough and high enough resolution that you can actually play the games like this, stacked in vertical mode. If you want to view the main screen big, you can of course toggle single screen mode, and then it's a typical 4:3 ratio, so you get the best of both worlds. You can swap between the screen styles depending on the game, just with a hotkey. And I've saved the best for last, my favorite system on this device, and the main reason that I know I'm gonna keep coming back to this thing again and again, Pico 8. I'm only just learning about the world of Pico 8, and I gotta tell you, it's like a whole new world of gaming. If you're not familiar, well, basically Pico 8 is like a fictional game console, and anyone can make games for it and release them. Sort of like modern retro games. Lots of these Pico 8 games actually went on to become full release games, like Celeste, but there are so many amazing Pico 8 games out there. And you can even make your own if you're into that sort of thing. You can use the Faco 8 emulator that comes with Gelos. Most games are fine, but it's a bit stuttery in some games. So if you want the best experience, you can buy the official Pico 8 application from the website, and it works great. And then you get the Explore app, which lets you see the featured games of the day. It's sort of like a Pico 8 app store, but everything's free. These Pico 8 games are 1:1 ratio games, and they fill the screen perfectly. I might do another video just on Pico 8. That could be a lot of fun, I think. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. If you're into great pixel art, into indie games, into modern games that go for the retro vibe, then definitely get some Pico 8 in your life. And if you want the perfect Pico 8 device, then look no further than the Powkiddy RGB30. I've started this review by saying there's no perfect overall handheld. only handhelds that are perfect for specific systems. Well, until now, we haven't had the perfect modern updated Game Boy or Game Boy Color system. And maybe this isn't perfect, but it's really damn close. And I can confidently say that this indeed is the perfect Pico 8 system. But even for the other stuff, the 4x3 stuff, I'm loving playing almost everything on the RGB30. It's definitely the sleeper hit of the year. It's not going to be for everyone, but for some people, myself included, it's a special device that does something new. So I'm going to award the Powkiddy RGB30 8 date squares because the screen on this thing is a square. It's a square screen. Date squares. And don't forget, Go Game Geek sell this, and they have it at a great price, so if you want one, you should go buy it from them. I'll include a link in the description below. If you like this video, then check out this video, my review of the X55, another solid budget handheld from Powkiddy this year. There's a link to that on the screen right now and at the top of the description below, and you can go watch that now because we're done. I'm TechDweeb, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.